Touareg problems were solved during the first restyling. The second generation is almost flawless. There is perhaps only one European SUV that has endured both stunning popularity and fair torrents of negativity. This is a Mercedes-Benz ML. But today's conversation will be about the VW Touareg, which got nuts, including from me personally, who broke the front CV joint while timidly trying to hang out on a stone as high as a children's ball. But how they waited for the first SUV from Volkswagen. How proudly Ferdinand Piëch strode at the company's booth during the first show in Paris in 2002. And there was a lot to be proud of. Excellent behavior on the pavement, comfortable ergonomic interior, good cross. All this determined the popularity, which in turn revealed a lot of congenital flaws. It is clear that the owners themselves are largely to blame, not too versed in the intricacies of modern SUVs and trying to operate the Touareg like some kind of Jeep Wrangler Rubicon. The cross-country ability of the German all-wheel drive is really decent, the set of off-road options inspired and provoked, but the margin of safety and reliability of some nodes were at the level of crossovers. The designers took into account almost all the complaints, preparing the second generation of Touareg, which was released in 2010. They say that the most common and unpleasant drawback of the new Touareg is the splash of diesel fuel in a half-empty tank, which is heard even by neighbors downstream. Is it so? The first major update affected the Volkswagen Touareg in 2007, when the main childhood diseases were eliminated, and in 2010 a new model was released, in the range of which a version without a lower appeared and with the torsion differential in the transfer case. A hybrid was a separate column, but it is so rare that it is simply impossible to collect any sane statistics on it. By the way, in fact, it was also a crossover. The new Touareg is 41 mm longer, 12 mm wider and has a 38 mm longer wheelbase. For Europe and Russia, a line of 5 engines, including a hybrid one, has been preserved. An 8-speed automatic appeared, which gave some headache to the owners, despite the eminent origin, because the transmission was developed by the great and invincible Eisen. And even in the first year, oddly enough it sounds after the mention of the eliminated shortcomings of the first generation, electronics pretty much spoiled the blood. At the same time, it was not control units that failed, but extensive peripherals. Literally everything could fail, from the preheater controller and lighting device contacts to unexpectedly appearing and disappearing when trying to diagnose leaks to ground. As at one time, preference should have been given to the spring version, so in the second generation you should not chase electronic bells and whistles. Even xenon should be avoided if you do not want to be left without light on the highway. And it becomes very insulting when the keyless entry system fails. Fortunately, the name is conditional and there is still a key in the transponder key fob. But if you remember how much you had to pay for this option. At the same time, more often it just slows down, and if you wait a couple of seconds, then most likely the locks will work. Or maybe not. A larger battery will somewhat correct the situation, because it is precisely because of the rapid loss of charge by our long and dark winters that problems with electronic equipment appear. Do not try to find the dipstick in the new Touareg, it has become electronic. Moreover, it can show the weather on Mars, and in a second the value of pi up to the 18th decimal place. But the main problem of VW Touareg diesel engines is not in it, but in the use of not very high-quality fuel, which can still be found on the periphery. Most of all, the most popular 3.0-liter engine sinned with this. Until 2011, when they changed the program of the control unit and finalized the high-pressure fuel pump, drilled chips. At one time, SUVs with Casa series engines fell under a recall campaign, but owners of CJMA diesel engines can only be lucky for service. To the credit of the minders of the concern, it should be noted that problems in the winter of the second-generation Touareg can arise only if you refuel with a very diesel solarium. Normal winter diesel fuel is digested even without being marked with the Euro brand. Do not be afraid of his smell in the cabin. As a rule, this is a fuel filter leaking, which will cost 3,000 rubles. With padding, it is important that it is either OEM or from a trusted manufacturer. In general, there are no global difficulties with second-generation Touareg engines, unless the front oil seal can begin to leak barely noticeably in V6s, both gasoline and diesel. However, this is a feature of many 6s and should not be very frightening. Chassis, suspension, and transmission can get on the nerves of the owner of Touareg, released between 2010 and 2011. As before, bellows can begin to bleed air through the connections. This usually happens in cold weather and is most likely due to the difference in expansion coefficients of different materials. Touareg most often falls on one wheel and does not fall on the axle, like, say, Discovery of the second family. You can find a leak only on the side, so it is treated by broaching everything and everything. Worse, if these measures did not help and you need to change the compressor, which will cost almost 100,000 rubles with work. The new 8-speed gearbox from Eisen on cars with powerful engines to run under 50,000 kilometers began to push when switching, especially if the owners like to shoot from traffic lights. In severe cases, this leads to the replacement of solenoids and a complete flush, 50,000 rubles. In the lungs, it is enough to reflash the brains of the box, reset the emergency codes and reset the algorithms. It helps for a short time, but it costs almost nothing. In general, a used Touareg is worth the money. As a rule, most of the shortcomings were identified during the warranty period and have already been eliminated by the previous owner. Therefore, in addition to the standard check of the car, it is worth inspecting its bottom for scratches, dents and other similar damage. For all its enviable potential, the VW Touareg is still not too fond of hard off-road driving.